Hello again, Steve here with a few comments on thought of the day I'm going to call the boy-girl game. And this topic came about as a result of me putting some editing efforts into a couple publications that I want to put out here in the next while. There's a short story that I wrote a number of years ago. It's called The Wisdom of Old Man Bill, and it was published in a very small-run journal. Short story, about 30 pages. And it's going to be published as a booklet with the same title. The other one is a rewrite of an old manuscript I had, and I'm going to title it as World Religion versus Self-Inquiry. That's about a 100-page work probably. And they both had sections in there to do with this, the reproductive system between men and women, right? Is so instrumental to life. The one story, The Wisdom of Old Man Bill, has to do with this young guy who gets embarrassed in the face, he faces humility in the face of his love interest. And that really messes with his mind. And the old guy, who's his neighbor, a lot of the story is them sitting down over a cup of tea, and the old guy's trying to draw out of him that it's perfectly natural what he's going through, and that the purpose, and he's trying to get him to see what the purpose of it all is. And it has to do with this innate drive to have relations, deep relations with some, and not so deep relations with others, and the reasoning behind it. And then the other book, I'd written this book a long time ago under a different title, and retitling it now with a little bit of a rework, but and a lot of the stuff in there I don't even agree with, but the point of republishing it is just to see what a young man's perspective. I was in my early 20s at the time when I wrote that, so what a young man's perspective on this stuff is. And it has a lot to do with, even then, as I saw it, ostensibly we say that men are the ones in control of the world, but especially in the Western world, we can see that women arguably have more power, because if everything aggregates to reproduction, which it really does, like a lot of the things that men do, the buildings they build, the cars they drive, the money they make, and everything is so that they can get women, so they can get to mate with women. And then women also are striving to hypergamy up the line of the men who produce the most. It's sort of natural to see that in terms of our evolution, right? It's very much of a driving force, but the thing is, women have the scarcity, right? There's only so many eggs versus, several hundred million sperms in every ejaculation of a man every day. So it's a scarcity versus abundance situation. So men are always disposable, and women are always protected. And because women are protected, and those are the ones that you cannot, that have to be defended, they're the ones in control, obviously, right? Because if one side can be disposed of, the other side can never be disposed of. They're the ones with the most power. And it's understandable too, because without the protection of women, we don't have the protection of children. So it goes like that. I mean, it's the children, the women, and the men, right? So the whole dance of control is around that. And I argue in there that it's ostensibly it's that men are the ones in control, but in reality, it's the women who hold the bed sheets, right? So, if in other words, if why men are doing stuff in the world is so that they can get women, then what the women do is what controls them. So if the women are, if the women favor socialism, then the men have to go for socialism. I think it was Hitler once said, you get a hold of the children, you get a hold of the women, you get a hold of the men. You don't go the other way around, because the men are always seen as a threat to the power brokers. Men are always traditionally the sovereigns. But if you can control their women, you can control them, and that's how it is, as I see it. As men are the women are in the control. But it's an interesting observation on both of these little stories, and I hope to be able to talk more about it as I get closer to the publication, which is going to take me a few months because I'm working also and trying to publish these several works at once. So, anyways, just wanted to share a little bit about that, about how that I think in many ways it's lost on us sometimes, the power that women have, and we get to think that it's men who run the show, But I mean, all you have to do is look around and see how, you know, men produced work-saving devices such as washing machines before they invented respirators for the coal miners for themselves, right? Um, you know, in court cases, family court cases, women win consistently, and it's okay that there's a women's movement called feminism, but as soon as there's a men's movement, men's rights movements, there's bomb threats and so on. So you see that the favoritism is towards women, which is a natural way because women had always to be a protected class because they have tended to be weaker and vulnerable, right? Women have a lot of vulnerabilities. They are the ones who are sought out by men because men are driven to reproduce with them, and they're bigger and stronger. So in more barbaric or uncivilized societies, women in fact were under threat, and they always had to be under constant protection. That still goes on, right? It still goes on. I mean, in most cities there's a women's hospital, but there's no men's hospital, for example, right? It's lost on a lot of people, I think, how blatant this stuff is, but it's understandable. It's understandable because it's because as far as societal activities go on, reproduction is the most important aspect. Otherwise, none of us are here. And in order for that reproduction to go on, women traditionally were disabled for most of their productive lives. They were pregnant, breastfeeding, and looking after toddlers all at once. When they're in that situation, women, they need a husband, right? Men don't need a husband. Husband, the word husband is not equivalent to the word wife. Wife in its origin just means woman, right? Husband doesn't mean man. Husband means caretaker, servant. It's somebody to serve you, right? And if you have a servant, you're in charge. So but I mean, it's not, I guess you could say both have their places for sure. But the overall thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was just the importance of it. And the importance that almost everything that humanity does leads back to reproduction in some way. So it's so critical. And it's what this old guy Bill was trying to explain to this young guy in the story, that why it is that you felt so burnt out, and why it is that this messed with your mind so much, that these bullies picked on you in front of your love interest, is because you showed weakness in front of your love interest. And it's implied, a lot of it, in the story, because it's a storytelling thing. It's not an instructional book. This is probably the first piece of fiction that I've written, which is just a story. But you can see in the story that he's telling them this is natural. It's because we men have to show a certain manliness, traditionally, to get a woman. And if we don't get the woman, because women are hypergamous. Women, by nature, will always want to feed up to the next status, powerful man. You know, and this is why what Donald Trump said in the back of that bus is absolutely correct. That there's many women who want to have their pussy grabbed by rich, powerful, good-looking men. It's a natural thing. It's just called hypergamy, or you know, that, and some people sort of a little bit callously call it gold digging, which is what it is too. But there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because women traditionally were vulnerable, disabled. In fact, they were categorized in most societies as disabled because they're disabled by the fact that most women, for most of the stretch of their productive life, were pregnant, lactating, and looking after toddlers all at once in their house or tent. And they need resources. Children, I've had a couple of them. They are resource rich, or resource demanding rather. Resource demanding consumers. And you know, a single man can get by on about 1/10 or 1/8 or whatever of what it takes to get by with a wife and kids. And yeah, so I just wanted to throw out nothing conclusive, no authority here whatsoever, but I just enjoyed reading some of that old stuff, and hopefully you'll have a chance as well to read some of this stuff in these two upcoming small books. Anyway, Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.